Hello, my name is Trinity from Trinity Educational Mission, where I talk about the latest research in education. You've probably heard someone say this before. Students struggle in school because of their smartphones. So parents take away the phone first, and teachers tell students to cut back on screen time. But is it really that simple? If we remove smartphones, will students automatically become more engaged in learning again? Today's study asks a different question. Is the biggest obstacle to learning really just smartphone use? The study I'm introducing today was recently published in the international journal titled Healthcare. The researchers surveyed 200 nursing students in South Korea. They examined 6 key factors together: smartphone addiction, depression, anxiety, fatigue, sleep quality, and learning engagement. What makes this study particularly interesting is that the researchers did not examine these factors separately. Instead, they used a method called network analysis to explore how all these factors are interconnected. Rather than asking which factor is the most important, they asked, how are these factors connected and how do they work together to influence student learning? The findings were fascinating. Many people assume that smartphone addiction is at the center of every problem. But the study found something different. The strongest connection was between fatigue and depression. In other words, students who experienced high levels of fatigue also tended to report higher levels of depression. On the other hand, smartphone addiction showed the strongest negative association with learning engagement. This means that students who reported greater smartphone addiction were generally less likely to participate actively in class, stay motivated to learn, and remain engaged in their studies. But the findings did not stop there. When the researchers analyzed the entire network, they discovered that depression occupied the most central position. In other words, among all the psychological factors examined, depression served as a key hub connecting fatigue, sleep quality, and the learning engagement with the overall network. It is important to understand one point. This was a cross-sectional study involving 200 nursing students in South Korea. Therefore, we cannot conclude that smartphone addiction causes depression or that depression directly causes lower learning engagement. The researchers themselves emphasize that this study does not establish a cause and effect relationship. Instead, it shows how these psychological and behavioral factors are interconnected. And that is exactly why this study is so meaningful. It reminds us that students' learning difficulties cannot be explained by a single factor alone. So what does this study mean for education? First, we need to look beyond students' academic performance and pay attention to their overall well-being. When a student struggles to concentrate in class, we should not immediately assume that the student simply lacks motivation. Instead, we should ask, are they getting enough sleep? Are they experiencing persistent fatigue? Are they emotionally exhausted? Learning does not happen through textbooks alone. It depends on the condition of both the student's mind and body. Second, we need to move beyond blaming smartphones alone. Although excessive smartphone use was negatively associated with learning engagement, this study also shows that simply taking away the smartphone will not solve every problem. Learning is a part of a much larger system in which smartphone use, sleep, fatigue, depression, and learning engagement are all interconnected. Effective education should not focus on fixing just one issue. It should consider the student's overall lifestyle and well-being. Third, if we want to improve students' learning engagement, we must also care about their psychological health. Many people think that academics and mental health are two separate issues. But today's story tells a different story. Learning engagement is closely connected to students' psychological well-being. If we want students to enjoy learning, participate actively in class, and continue learning over time, education must go beyond simply teaching knowledge. It must also support students' mental and emotional well-being. Today's study leaves us with an important question. When a student's grades begin to decline, what is the first thing we usually think? They're just not studying hard enough. They spend too much time on their smartphones. Those may be our first assumptions, But today's research encourages us to ask a deeper question. Could this student simply be exhausted? Could they be struggling emotionally before they are struggling academically? Good education is not simply about improving grades. It is about understanding students' minds, their daily lives, and their learning as part of one interconnected system. When we do that, students are far more likely to keep learning, grow with resilience, and thrive both academically and personally. If you found today's video helpful, please like and subscribe.